Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Dad Bods, Crab Cakes and Sports. We're talking everything Baltimore sports and beyond. Unfortunately, tonight we are Jasonless, but this is Mike here with John. John is coming to you live on location at the local McDonald's in wherever he lives in Florida. John, how you doing this evening?
Well, I'm good, Mike. I came back from work today and the internet wasn't working. And so I tried to hop on and use my hotspot, but that didn't work either. So I figured McDonald's has Wi-Fi. I haven't had dinner yet. So come in here and the people will look at me like I'm weird, but I found my own little like private corner by the bathrooms. And as long as, as long as nobody is frequenting the bathrooms too much, I'll be okay.
I'm expecting Ronald and Grimace to make an appearance in the background at some point. And so the other thing I've been having, I told you last time I've been having headaches, and I heard that the greatest cure for migraines is like the salty sweet combination of like McDonald's French fries and like a Coke from the fountain. Like that's supposed to be even better than some medications for migraines. So why don't you order me up one of those and ship it up here to Baltimore so I feel a little bit better?
Yeah, I think the McDonald's Coke, I think, cures a lot of illnesses. That and Verner's.
I
Verner's ginger ale. I think it cures all illnesses known to man.
I also think that it could probably take some stain off of some road surfaces and things like that. I think they use that to clean up because it probably does that to my insides as well. But nonetheless, John, how are things? How was your trip to? You went to Vegas, right?
Yeah, it was good on Saturday. I literally sat in the sports book and watched college football from like 9:30 in the morning until I don't know 10:30 at night. And there was all kinds of fun people there. You guys, watched the Texas game, and there's a couple Longhorns fans, and um, just all kinds of different stuff watching and having fun. So it was good. Good. In fact, everybody on the plane seemed to be sick, like coughing and things of that nature. But other than that, it was fun, and I didn't win any money, but you know,
Nothing like being a few miles high in the air, stuck on an airplane with a bunch of people coughing, right, John?
oh, exactly. I didn't want to get COVID. Well, you've never been to Vegas, right?
No, no, but
So
I'm
so once
definitely
this new
curious.
when this new ballpark opens, we'll have to take a road trip out there and maybe bring our families and go to the ball game. My room overlooked where they're building the ballpark, so I was watching them move some dirt and those sorts of things.
Nice. Did you, while you were at the casino at the sports book, watching the college games, did you make any wagers and how did that go?
I put a couple bucks down on overs and unders, and I think I won like $5 and lost 15. I just just tried my luck at some of it, and I didn't go too big. You did well yesterday.
I
Tell
did
everybody
do
what
well
happened to
yesterday.
you.
I did do well yesterday. So listen, this comes on, I had a struggle this weekend on Saturday. We had a soccer game for my son and three lacrosse games for my daughter. And then my high school team played we got a bye in the first round, but the second round of the playoffs. Everybody lost. Everybody in the family lost on Saturday. We got upset in the playoff game. The other team packed it back and they scored a goal. They won in penalty kicks. So I was absolutely crushed. But my wife, God bless her, booked me a massage yesterday. She made me buffalo chicken dip, sausage dip. She basically waited on me yesterday. She's an amazing lady and made me feel much, much better. But the icing on the cake or the cherry on top was the sports bet I placed on the Ravens yesterday. It was a 7-leg parlay that hit $10 to win 647 bucks. So it was two Derrick Henry touchdowns. It was, a couple other like yardage things, and all of it came to fruition. The last thing I needed was a D Hop reception, and that big play he made on third down was the one that sealed the deal for me. He only needed one plus reception on the game, and that's all he got.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, you talk about penalty kicks. So you know how like we moved to Indiana to start a high school, and in Indiana, soccer at the time was not classified. We didn't have classes, so everybody just played in one class. And so about 3 years after we moved to Minnesota, 4 years after we moved to Minnesota, they their soccer team was amazing. They went a school of less than 120 kids, went up against a school of like 3,000, hit the crossbar on the penalty kick, and lost the game to go to the state
Oh,
finals.
oh man.
And putting that kind of, what's that like as a coach? Having that kind of pressure on your high school girls or high school boys.
It,
That's got to be
with
nerve wracking
the
for
girl,
you.
it's tough with the girls. So to me, it's more about picking the girls to take the kicks and knowing the personalities, which makes it difficult. In this particular instance, the officials that we had weren't particularly good. I was trying to get certain people on the field at the end of the game to take the kicks because you have to be on the field. And there was a substitution opportunity, and the officials didn't even recognize it. So I didn't get the takers I wanted even on the field for the PK. So there were a lot of errors that all kind of led downhill to basically a team we should not have lost to, ended up losing to. But like I said, the little parlay I had definitely helped me out and helped me through the day. But we should digress and talk a little bit. Mike DeMarco, who's actually a good friend of mine, said Ravens won, Pittsburgh lost, Cincinnati lost, Cleveland lost. Orioles hired an unknown. Are they going cheap again instead of hiring a top and proven head coach? Well, we'll get into that, Mike, in a couple minutes, talk about the Orioles hiring a manager. But let's start with the Ravens win, John. 30-16, I believe, over the Chicago Bears on Sunday. A much needed victory. What do you take away from that win in Baltimore yesterday?
Well, I think they played well in all three facets of the game. I think that the offense, the defense, and the special teams all showed up to play. And I think if we can keep this up for the remainder of the season, that this is going to be a very difficult team to beat. As Kevin said in the podcast today on Locked On Ravens, um, seeing Keaton Mitchell get 4 carries for 43 yards. I mean, we've been clamoring for this for the entire year, getting Keaton Mitchell the ball, put it in his hands, let him go to work. And look at him. My boy Mike Green showed up. 1 sack, and I think he had 2 other pressures and a quarterback hit. So, I think, and then also the blitzing. The blitzing coming from the Ravens was getting pressure on Caleb Williams, was forcing him to make quick decisions, forced him into, I believe it was 2 intentional groundings, and he looked uncomfortable. This is the first game of year this year where the quarterback on the opposing team has looked uncomfortable, and Snoop just went to work. There's a reason he was in the Pro Bowl a couple of years ago, and
Well, I
we
mean,
should have kept
I
him.
think you say that tongue in cheek, but I mean, he was 17 for 22 with 186 yards and a touchdown. And I think the biggest piece that the Ravens were missing was, his ability to run the football, which, this offense is built around Lamar Jackson and the style of Lamar Jackson. And I think we would both agree that Tyler Huntley more suits that style than Cooper Rush. And that was clearly evident when he took off on a couple plays and used his legs to pick up some much needed yardage in key situations, because this Ravens team has had trouble offensively and defensively on third down, either moving the chains and getting off the field, which they did much better after the first quarter in that area yesterday. If you watch the first quarter, you probably were concerned watching the Bears have 180 some yards of offense to the Ravens, like 3 plays and I don't know, 2 yards or whatever it was, or 4 yards. But after the first quarter, they kind of settled in. The fact that they held the Bears to field goals on those first 2 possessions instead of touchdowns was a huge improvement over previous Ravens defensive efforts. And I think that was one of the major keys to the game, is their red zone defense really. And obviously the big play of the game was the Nate Wiggins, interception there. After you force them, you try to draw them off sides on a 4th and 5, doesn't work. You pin them deep inside the 5, and then they run the ball out in the next play. Nate Wiggins undercuts a throw, and you set us up for that Charlie Kohler touchdown, which was really, I think, put the Ravens ahead for good.
Well, and I was nice to see Kohler get that. He's been working hard all year as the number 2 tight end and just hasn't had the opportunity. But I think I've been saying this, and then JJ Watt said it during the game too, about having Pat Ricard back. Pancake Pat, if you watch, Henry wasn't getting hit like in the first 6 games of the season. He was getting hit in the back, and I mention this every week. He was getting hit in the backfield. Where yesterday, he didn't have any real big runs, but he was getting 4 or 5 yards a pop. because he wasn't getting hit until he got to the second level. And J.J. Watt mentioned that during the television broadcast that Ricard is taking that first hit and opening up some holes. And if we could be getting 4 or 5 yards of carry out of Henry, and then we saw how Keaton Mitchell went to work, just how quick that guy is. The cuts, the jukes, and getting outside the tackles and getting out there to run. It's gonna be very, very difficult, assuming everybody else can stay healthy, but getting those two guys rolling and getting, and even Justice Hill didn't have a huge game, but he still looked pretty good back there. So I think if we can get that three-headed monster rolling, no matter who the quarterback is, I think we'll be pretty good.
Well, I think it's a four-headed monster if you include the quarterback. And you know, Derrick Henry led the Ravens 21 rushes for 71 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I think you make a great point, John, is the negative plays weren't there, right? It was, even if it was a 2-yard gain, we were moving forward, and it wasn't like we were getting, pushed into the backfield. The offensive line wasn't getting flattened, and they really did a much better job of moving the line forward and getting positive yards on most plays. And then Tyler Huntley, like I said, he had 8 rushes for 53 yards. That's huge for this Ravens team. And obviously, like we said, getting Keaton Mitchell on the field, the rushing attack was excellent. But let's talk a little bit about the Ravens defense. Having Roquan Smith back, what a huge factor that was, because I think, number one, you have Smith and Hamilton on those 2 levels. You have veteran leadership there. You have control over the defensive calls, where we had some rookies in there previously. And now you've got a much more consistent Ravens team in there that are more familiar with one another. Marlon made some decent plays. He was back there, and it just had the defense that we thought we were going to have more so at the beginning of the year. Making the stops. They weren't like setting the world on fire on defense, but they were an average NFL defense, which, if you have a good Ravens offense with the average NFL defense, we're giving ourselves a chance to win more game in, game out. You can't have the defense that just gets completely annihilated by the opposing offense and takes your team right out of the game.
And also, I think the biggest thing was having the 3 safety look and allowing Hamilton to be the Swiss Army knife, being up at the line of scrimmage, causing havoc. Got to remember, the guy's what, 6'4", so he causes a matchup problem whenever he's up near the line, because as the quarterback's dropping back to pass, you got a guy who's 6'4", athletic, and can make those plays. Makes things even more difficult. And the Ravens, was it Buchanan, I think, made a really, really nice play near the goal line and stopped the run from getting in, and then held that field goal. I think it was Buchanan. And then Hamilton came in, and they all rallied to the ball and stopped them from scoring a touchdown. But, the other thing, and Mike says we beat a mediocre team in the Bears. On defense, I would agree with that. I think that the defense with the Bears, I think they were playing their 4th, 5th, and 6th string cornerback, and I think they were missing 3 defensive linemen. So their defense was pretty depleted, but still their offense is not bad. Their offense is very good, and I think we played pretty. We allowed Williams that one was about 40-yard rush in man, and he just escaped, but it didn't come back to bite us. But I think this is a good stepping stone, and again, we have an easier schedule the remainder of the season.
Yeah, and you can't help who's in front of you. You play the team that's in front of you. And I mean, Mike, I know that it wasn't quite an inspiring performance per se, but you're also playing without Lamar Jackson, your best football player. So to get a win without Lamar, which this team has had a lot of trouble doing, I think is important. And yes, it wasn't quite, felt like, it doesn't feel like we're world beaters all of a sudden, but it definitely feels like we can be more competitive as we come into a stretch of games where we're not playing amazing opponents. We're playing Miami, we're playing Minnesota, we're playing the Jets coming up. We're not playing these top tier teams. So to get healthy, hopefully, and to kind of get Lamar healthy, obviously, is the biggest key to our season. John, do you think he's going to play this Thursday night in Miami?
They were talking like he's going to play, but I don't know. I mean, if he's not 100% healthy, you can't play him. If there's any doubt that he's a little bit hurt, you can't play him. It's not like, we're playing the Dolphins, so I don't know. I would love to see him play, but if he's not 100% healthy, that you can't.
No. And Mike makes a great point about the turnover battle that the Ravens won yesterday. I mean, just to go ahead and to cause a turnover in a key situation and to hold on to the ball, not fumble like we've been known to do here of late, is key for Ravens success. And the second thing I'd say is field position, special teams. John, you mentioned it was a full game for the Ravens team. Keaton Mitchell had some really big returns. Jordan Stout had some really nice punts, and the field position for a team down their starting quarterback is so crucial because it just feels like you're starting in more positive territory than having to work the ball the entire length of the field, with an offense not led by its leader. So to be able to have a short field in certain opportunities kind of makes the game much easier for a backup quarterback. So you have to give kudos to the special teams who actually performed, and they've had some issues of late. So complete game for the Ravens. I don't think that necessarily means much, overall with the season, but you know what? 2-5, the Steelers lose this weekend, the Bengals lose this weekend, the Browns lose this weekend. This division is really still wide open, I would say, with the Steelers leading it at 4-3. John, do you think the Ravens are right in this thing?
Absolutely. I think once we get Lamar back, I think anything is possible from here on out. I think it's going to be a big thing if the defense can get pressure on the quarterback. I think that's because look at the AFC North. How many mobile quarterbacks are there? None. You got two guys over 40, and you got a rookie. So I think the big thing to win the AFC North and to win those games
easy
out.
with the over 40 comments, John. I think I know you're on the right side of 40, but let's take it
Actually,
easy on us 40 plus year olds, because this is a great segue to the latest Orioles news, right? We just hire a manager who happens to be my age of 42. And John, what are your thoughts on the Orioles hire of Craig Alvarez?
This is the dumbest thing we could have potentially done. I, Look at him. He has no World Series winning experience. He has no winning experience at the big league level. He won a I think a World Class A championship or something. Nothing. Everything we talked about the Orioles needing, he does not provide. He's just another Elias yes man, and that's the way that this is going to go. He's an Elias yes man, and we're going to keep running into these same problems. I mean, I really thought a fresh guy like a Pujols or I said this before, a Latin American manager who can connect with those players or get some good free agents off the islands and things would have been a huge thing for the Orioles. But again, I think they just go with the yes man. I mean, who ever heard of this guy? Like,
Well,
again,
John, I know that you're not pleased with the hire, it sounds like. And so, I mean, if he did interview for the Nationals job along with Brandon Hyde, so it's not like he is, off the radar of other. And he also interviewed last year for the Marlins job and another job and declined it instead of took a new role at Cleveland as like an assistant to the manager, basically like Dwight Schrute to Michael Scott, right? Like assistant to the manager. He took that role. And clearly he has been sought after. So it's not like he's not on people's radar. So just really quick, John, before we move forward with my opinion, it says, Elias said, we are elated to welcome Craig Alvarez as the next manager of the Orioles and our leader on the field. Craig has built an exemplary career across multiple successful organizations and brings a tremendous amount of experience, knowledge, and talent to our organization and to this new challenge. We believe he is the right person at the right time to elevate our baseball operations and guide our team back to the playoffs and a World Series championship. So, a lot to break down there. For me, not quite the experience I was looking for. You knew I was looking for somebody like Bruce Bochy, Ron Washington, that had the seasoning of having a clubhouse that you just automatically respect this guy. He does not check that box at all. And so that's where my frustration lies. Now, I am curious because it does seem like he's an intriguing hire, because I think if you probably ask the Guardians organization, he's probably their next manager after Vogt's gone, probably. And I think the fact that they decided to promote him and keep him versus losing him to the Marlins or some of these other clubs trying to hire him, tells me that he's somebody that is, highly sought after. So that's good. Second thing is I do like the youth and the enthusiasm and the ability to connect that he has with young players. I think that where we are is a key to this, young, roster of, you can name them all, right? Westberg, Rushman, Gunner, Jackson Holiday, Mayo, Basayo. They're all, 20 somethings learning the game. So you look at it that way, it's good that he can build those relationships and maybe grow with the team. But again, my disappointment is the fact that he doesn't bring that World Series, like you said, experience, which we were really looking for in the hire.
Well, here's the other thing with him too, and this may be kind of a thing the Orioles will think of. He was the catching coordinator almost all the way through his entire career. So what I'm wondering is, what kind of work can he do with Adley and Basayo? What is he? Is he somebody who just got that because he's good with catchers, or because he actually, has the kind of we talk about the quarterback whisperer in football. Is he like a catching whisperer? Can he help improve, Basayo and Adley and help us actually control the base running game? Because it always seems like year after year, we have one of the highest numbers of stolen bases against. And, part of that's on our pitchers, but part of that's on our catchers as well. So I'm kind of wondering if he can, do something with that and maybe help improve that side of our game too. But I don't know. I was just really, really hoping for that big name. But again, think about this though, Mike, and you've mentioned this, Stephen Kwan. He has a relationship with Stephen Kwan. He has a relationship with Josh Naylor. Josh Naylor was in Cleveland and he was going through the Cleveland farm system with this guy. So could that play a role? Could he bring in a guy like a Naylor? We talked about him, a couple weeks ago as a free agent for the Orioles to bring in. Could this be the guy who, they have a relationship from his minor league days in Cleveland? Does that play a role in it?
Now, I think connections are important, John. I'm not sure you make a hire like this just for those connections. But does it hurt? Absolutely not. I think having those connections is key. He spent some time, in the Tampa Bay organization, which we know is a quality organization. They hired him as a coach in 2015. He managed 2 years in low minors, eventually hired by the Giants, another pretty good organization, right? And you'd say the Guardians had a pretty good past couple years. So though he hasn't had that necessarily World Series experience, he has had experience with winning environments and winning culture. So to me, it seems like a fit that's fits right with Elias, right? Like all those kind of ball clubs that know how to win without maybe spending the most money. The Guardians, the Rays, those are some of those teams that have found ways to do it. That's what I'm worried about, because it doesn't sound like we're ready to open our pocketbooks. It looks like we're ready to try to find ways to win with what we have. I'd like to see a combination of that, which to me, this hire doesn't indicate that you're willing to open it up. But I do like that he said that we're interested in winning world championships in his comments, because that is what the Orioles fans have been clamoring for since 1983, when I was 3 months old.
Yeah, I guess it's going to be one of those things of, was this just a fluke year? Well, we had injuries, Cowser was out the second game of the year. Westberg was hurt a significant amount of the time. Gunner didn't even start the season until almost June. All our starting pitching ended up getting hurt, things of that nature. So that's also the other thing that kind of is in the back of my mind is, okay, if we can stay healthy, if everybody can stay healthy, is it going to matter really who the man? Because, like in baseball, it's not as much like a strategy game the way that, football is, or even basketball or soccer, and how much, does the injuries and those sorts of things play on our season from last year? But also then we're going to need to bring in, again, that starting pitching, because, that's the pitching is going to end up being what I think our downfall, if we're going to have a downfall this year, is going to be.
So John, it's funny that you talked about starting pitching, because that's the one other thing I'd like to talk to you real quick about the Orioles. So there was an article in MLB Trade Rumors, October 21st, about pitchers with qualifying offers. And we all know the Orioles and their, kind of hesitance to sign somebody who has a draft pick attached to them or something like that, where they have to give something up to get them. So you're looking at those. that are no doubt going to get a qualifying offer. That's Dylan Cease, Edwin Diaz, Ranger Suarez, and Framber Valdez. And we've talked about a couple of those guys as being great fits for the Orioles. So I am concerned that the Orioles go that direction. If you look at a couple other of these pitchers as I go down the line, they are borderline calls. They say maybe Jack Flaherty gets a qualifying offer, maybe not. Giolito maybe gets one, maybe not. Shoto Managa on the Cubs maybe gets a qualifying offer. So they talk about all those. Do you think the Orioles shop in that market? And I'm going to go through in a minute and tell you some of these other names that aren't on that list.
I don't think so. It's just the way that they've done things in the past. I don't think they're going to give up their. It's very much like the Ravens do. Both Baltimore teams don't like the part with their draft picks, and in baseball it's a little bit different. But I don't see them doing that. I think there's enough guys out there on the open market. Well, and you saw the rumors this week that we would be interested in Skubal from the Tigers.
I also saw
And
100 Green from the Reds. I
yes,
mean, I've seen a lot being written. Let me give you a couple names that are unlikely to get qualifying offers. They say Brad Keller from the Cubs, Tyler Mahle from the Rangers, Robert Suarez, Padres, Luke Weaver, Yankees, Devin Williams, who we've talked about in relief. That would be nice. And then there are some that aren't able to even have ineligible, perhaps, for a qualifying offer. And this list gets interesting to me. It's Chris Bassett, Shane Bieber, Razel Iglesias, Merrill Kelly, Zach Little, Nick Martinez, and Justin Verlander. And the name that jumps at me is Shane Bieber, because I feel like if you're not attached to a qualifying offer, that to me is a Oriole move to go after Shane Bieber and put him in your rotation with the likes of, the guys they have now with Bradish and what Trevor Rogers has done this year. I think those three at the top of your rotation looks pretty good.
yeah, I see a Bieber move. I think that's the guy, and we talked about this last time or 2 times ago. That Bieber seems to be the guy that would fit and would be probably easier to get than some of these other ones. But my fear is, do they do an Orioles move and grab Verlander because it's Verlander? He's 40, he's 44, he'll be 44 this offseason. So, but no, the Bieber, I like the Bieber. I think as long as it's not Justin Bieber, I think
Hey,
Shane will.
let's bring him.
Shane
He's
will be just.
available too. He's a Canadian singer. We like that. Just bring him. Bring Rush too. I like that Canadian rock band. Let's bring them too. And for those of you with dad bods who like the rock band Rush, I heard recently from a colleague that they're touring again next year, but be willing to shell out like $200+ a ticket to go see them locally in Philly or something like that. So with the Orioles have a lot to work on, obviously, this offseason. Right now, we're just in the initial phases of the offseason. Not really in the offseason yet, technically, because we have World Series Game 3 tonight between the Dodgers and the Blue Jays, which will be an interesting game. But hopefully, now that we have a manager, we can start preparing and discussing amongst the heads in the central office there of Orioles and figure out what they're going to do next, and hopefully get a game plan together and see what happens.
Yeah, and I'd love to get the general manager in there, and then I think free agency starts. I don't remember how many days after the World Series, but like we talked about, they're going to have to figure out the back end of the bullpen and the front end of the rotation, and I think that'll be very interesting to see how, with a new manager, no general manager yet, how far away that general manager hire is, and how much say they're actually going to have in the club and in the moves that are made.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, there's some phases like the non-tender date and all that kind of stuff, which is November 21st. So there's a bunch that has to happen, and the Rule 5 draft in December 10th, and I like the offseason of MLB. It's kind of fun to kind of slow play and watch and a lot of things develop slowly a lot of times in Major League Baseball as compared to like the NFL free agency where everything boom hits the ground and you're gone. So John, let's segue a little bit. I did this with Jason a couple times, but it's just you and I tonight. I have something I call the rundown, where I'm just going to go through and ask you a bunch of rapid fire questions that are kind of or what popular topics maybe, but kind of twist on them, maybe going on in sports. And you're just going to give me your gut answer. Okay.
Okay. So we're not running down. We're not going back and forth between two bases.
I don't feel like running. It's like 8:30 at night when we're recording right now. I just had some appetizers, with happy hour. So I don't think the rundown's good for me. So let's stick with the one where I ask you questions. All right, ready? The Orioles
Yes.
made the best possible choice in manager Craig Alvarez.
No, but it remains to be seen. Right now I'll say no, but if we win the World Series next year, then I'll say it was a great hire.
Yes. All right, All right, this you have to listen carefully to this one. The Ravens will catch the Steelers in the AFC North. The Bills will catch the Patriots in the AFC East. Both or neither?
Both.
Both.
Yep.
Wow. That's well, give me a little bit of why.
Well, I think that the Bills with Josh Allen at the helm are just a more experienced experienced football team than the Patriots are. And I think, obviously the Ravens are a better team than the Steelers every year. So it doesn't really the matter at that end. I got too many Steelers fans at work. So
Do
the
they
Ravens
both
have
do
to
they still
win.
make the playoffs, or I know the pedigree of the Ravens and the Bills, they have the playoff experience. They've been through the battles. I can see why you say that, but what do you think about the Steelers and the Patriots?
I I think if the Steelers can keep Aaron Rodgers on the field, and I think they may get a wild card. And I could see all four teams making the playoffs, and then the Chiefs out of the West.
So you don't think Denver holds on to that spot either?
No, I don't. After watching them, almost get blown out by the Giants and those sorts of things, I'm not as high on Denver as I was to start the season.
They curb stomped the Cowboys this weekend, though.
Yeah. Well, your
All right.
sister could curb stomp the Cowboys every year too.
Oh, okay.
My sister can curb stomp the Cowboys. They're not a good team. That's why Cooper Rush came to Baltimore.
All right. Today is the so-called sports equinox. Basically, we have all four professional sports playing today. We got MLB, we've got NFL on Monday Night Football, we've got NHL and NBA, and that rarely happens. John, what's your favorite sports day or time of the year?
Favorite sports day or time of the year? Well, I mean, it depends on what my teams are doing. If the Ravens are in the Super Bowl, that's my favorite day of the year. If the Orioles are in the World Series, that's my favorite day of the year. But I think the NFL draft is probably my favorite sports day of the year. I love all the outfits and seeing these guys, who worked so hard for so long do this and seeing, what our favorite team can do and these sorts of things. And to see, if Mel Kiper was right or if Todd McShay was right or, who actually had the right thing and those things. But I think the NFL draft is probably my favorite sports day of the year.
Yeah, that's not bad. March is fun too. You get March Madness, you get the NFL
But
free
you said a
agency.
day. You said a
Yeah,
day.
day or time or season, I said, but that's fine. All right. Dodgers,
What about
Blue
you?
Jays.
What's your favorite?
Yeah, just March Madness, probably NFL free agency. You get spring training and the beginning of the baseball season. To me, that's probably, especially if you're taking away Ravens and Orioles in the playoffs, I would say that to me is probably my favorite time of year. Golf is on the horizon, all that kind of stuff. Dodgers, Blue Jays game 3 tonight. Scherzer versus Glasnow. Who has the edge in the game this evening?
I think the Dodgers at home.
Just home field advantage.
Just home field advantage. I think when you have Shohei and Freddie Freeman at the top of your lineup, you're well set.
All right. Green Bay, Philly, Tampa, and Seattle are all leading their divisions in the NFC. Which division leader is most likely to not win their division from those NFC teams?
I think the Eagles. The Packers. I think the Lions are a very, very good football team, and I think the Packers.
All right, John, we're starting to lose that internet connection. Maybe you need to walk up to Ronald McDonald and ask him to help you out. ESPN had an article ranking 80 teams on their March Madness potential. and Maryland was rated in their 6th tier, which was titled Total Rebuild. Will they over, under, or just perform to that diagnosis? Well, we've lost John, so I will answer that. To me, I feel like they will at least perform up to the fact that they'll be on the edge of March Madness. I'm not sure that they'll make the tournament. I think, obviously playing in the Big Ten is tough to schedule, game in and game out. There's really no break in the Big Ten. And you're asking a brand new coach with completely new players to compete. I think there's a chance they make the tournament. But if you're asking me to kind of think that they're going to, be a Sweet 16 team, there's no way they're going to be in that tier. So if they make the tournament, I think this year it's a win no matter what. All right. Well, John, are you still with us, or are you still out there in outer space in McDonald's somewhere? All right. Well, we've lost John. So I think, John, if you have nothing else, we're going to wrap this puppy up. So that's going to do it for this episode of Dad Bods, Crab Cakes, and Sports. Thanks for hanging out with us this evening. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. They're free: Apple, Amazon, Spotify, all those fun places. Check us out on social media: Facebook, YouTube. We are on Twitter and X, or whatever all those things are called. You can find us, Dad Bods, Crab Cakes, and Sports. You can find us at dadbodscrabcakesandsports@gmail.com. You never know. Send us an email. We'll address your topic, or maybe even shout you out in our next episode. But until next time, keep on rocking those dad bods, eating those crab cakes, and never miss the game. Good night from Ronald McDonald, John, and myself.
Adios.